session of the today's CME. So I'll be going to talk on conventional microbiological approach for ocular infections. So what I'll be discussing in my session is the importance of microbiology in ocular diagnosis, sample collection and processing, interpretation, basics of antibiotic susceptibility, interpreting the susceptibility reports, and issues with the conventional diagnostic approach. Now, mainly I'll be focusing on bacteria and the fungus. So eye is exposed to external environment and is connected to the systemic blood circulation, and it is prone to multitude of infections starting from self-limiting conjunctivitis to sight-threatening choroiditis and retinitis. Now, how do the organisms enter the eye? Either it can be exposure to fomites, fingers, airborne, or from the adnexal infections, or from the upper respiratory tract, or it can be due to endogenous spread, or it can be the transplacental passage from the pathogen to the fetus. So most important predisposing factor for any infection usually is the trauma. Does that mean that if the organism enters the eye, will it lead to infection? No, it's always an interplay between the virulence of the pathogen, size of the inoculum, competence, and the nature of the host defense mechanism. So as you all know, a little about like how eye is being an immunoprivilege, any foreign objects which enter the eye, it doesn't trigger an immunological response per se. It's a defense mechanism which is there. But any infection, if the pathogen is highly virulent, it will override the immunological privilege mechanism, and then the immune-driven tissue destruction will lead. So that's the main cause for tissue destruction. So little about the normal ocular flora. Resident flora, these are the normal commensal flora. So transient flora, see, some part of the time the organism sits on the eye and it just goes, depending on the occupational exposure. Like farmers will have fungi sitting on the eye. In case of hospitalized chronic patients, Pseudomonas will be there. And in case of children, most commonly pneumococci and Haemophilus are the common organisms. So these are the principal organisms in various ocular infections: cellulitis, canaliculitis, dacrocystitis, blepharitis, and these are the principal organisms for keratitis, scleritis, and endophthalmitis. So even in India and globally, the most common bacteria causing is Staphylococci, especially coagulous negative Staphylococci, Streptococcus pneumoniae, and among gram negative, it is Pseudomonas aeruginosa. So these are the commonest bacteria which we isolate. Among the fungus, it's the Fusarium and the Aspergillus, and in the Western countries, it is most commonly is the Candida. Now, often, how you diagnose an infection is by history and the clinical examination. So now, how does a microbiological diagnosis play a role is? So by knowing the organism, what organism it is susceptibility, you can start with the specific therapy. So sometimes if the empirical therapy fails, you keep on giving empirical treatment, it will be more chance of acquiring the resistance. So appropriate therapy halts the pace of the progression. But unlike any other body samples, we have certain challenges associated with diagnosing the ocular infections. So one is the sample volume is very less, the pathogen load will be less, and in irreplaceable specimens, and need for bedside inoculation is very much required. And also, most of the times, the sample which we receive will be already priorly exposure to the antibiotics. And also, there are diverse pathogens causing the infections. You have varied specific growth requirements required for the cultivation. And also, from remote sites, logistic behind the transport of the sample. So coming to the methodologies, so first is the most important for you is the sample collection, and then direct microscopy, culture and antimicrobial susceptibility, and the molecular biology. So coming to the sample collection, so these are the various samples which we receive from an eye infections. One is conjunctival swab, the most common, corneal scraping is the common, and then swab from any purulent material, corneal buttons, vitreous and AC tabs, and contact lens and foreign bodies and infected intraocular lens. And then other specimens, especially in endogenous endophthalmitis, we take up urine, blood, and throat swab also are all cultured. And for serological investigations, we collect the blood also. Now, one more I would like to tell is in the request form, the most thing which we expect is to write about the clinical diagnosis. See, always it is the clinical diagnosis which will help us to look it into that direction. And also recent use of any antimicrobial agent also should be entered along with the demographic profile. So general instructions before collecting the sample, mainly it's like you have to maintain the sterility during the collection, And then early the better, within 24 to 48 hours of symptoms, you need to collect the sample. And then follow standard precautions before collecting. So coming to the recommended procedures, so the swabs, when do we use the swab for what infection is? Blepharitis, conjunctivitis, and dacrocystitis, we use the swabs usually. So these swabs, always remember, don't use dry swab. Always you have to use the swab which is moistened with the laboratory supplied broth, like we use thioglycolate broth. Or you can, if you don't have a lab supplied broth, you have to wet it, moisten it with the sterile saline, and then only you have to collect the conjunctival swab. So coming to the procedure for conjunctival swab, just ask the patient to look up and gently pull the lower lid down, and then gently sweep and roll the swab stick along the lower fornix from the inner canthi to the outer canthi, and then take care not to touch the eyelids. And repeat the procedure if the other eye is always also requested, and wash hands in between to avoid the contamination. And always better if you send us 2 swabs, one for smear and other for culture. So transportation, always I stress that the bedside is the best method because of the low volume of the sample. So swabs are accepted only for the eyelids, lid margin, conjunctiva, and samples from the superficial lacrimal system. And if your culture material is not available, you can't do the bedside inoculation, immediately transport to the lab at room temperature for processing. Coming to the other samples, corneal scrapings, the procedure and regarding scrapings, you'll be listening to in the next sessions. Cellulitis, it is drainage from the wound or abscess collected in the sterile container. Uveitis, anterior chamber fluid. Endophthalmitis, AC tap and Witters taps are collected. And for corneal biopsy in deep-seated stromal infiltrates, corneal biopsy is sent as a specimen. And in non-healing keratitis, corneal buttons. And for postoperative endophthalmitis, IOL lens itself is sent as the specimen. Now, how do you transport this? See, IOL is a very precious sample. The volume also which will be tapped is very, very minimal. So it's very precious. So as soon as you tap the thing, send the syringe itself, if possible, with the cap. Okay. In case, or you can transfer it, if there's a sufficient amount of volume, you can aliquot into a sterile vial, and then you can send it to the laboratory immediately. Coming to the other foreign objects, contact lens, bandage contact lens, it is directly inoculated onto the blood agar and sent it to the laboratory. Or if the lab is in-house, you can send it immediately. Foreign objects always on the blood agar. It has to be kept on the blood agar. Tissues transported intact and moistened with sterile saline for bacterial culture. Anaerobic culture, specimen should be placed in anaerobic transport device, and swabs are not acceptable for anaerobic culture. And viral culture, if you want, then you have to transport it in ice pack. And molecular analysis also always send the sample in ice pack to maintain the stability of the nucleic acid. So coming to the direct microscopy. Now, these are the stains which we use in the laboratory. The Gram stain and the KOH is the commonest one which we use in most of our laboratories. Now, Gram stain is a very simple procedure, but very effective in treating. Like it will, what are the uses is, it will differentiate between the bacterial and fungal by the direct Gram stain report. So you can start your empirical therapy based on your Gram stain report. And also it will help us to recognize amoeba and microsporidia. Also it differentiate between Gram positive or Gram negative. And it also helps to visualize nocardia, and also some of the atypical mycobacteria can be visualized in Gram stain. And also presence of pus cells, inflammatory cells, helps us to know whether it's really an infective one or what we are seeing is a commensal flora. So coming to the KOH mount, it is used to visualize the fungal hyphae. Giemsa stain helps to identify the type of the inflammatory cell seen, acanthamoeba cyst and chlamydia, and acid fast stain helps to visualize the mycobacteria and the nocardia. So what are the advantages of all these direct microscopy techniques? As I told you, it's very simple, highly sensitive, cost-effective, rapid procedure. You can start your empirical therapy, and then it provides, and it is semi-quantitative. You will grade the smear so that you will also know the pathogen load, and also it will provide the culture clues for us to process further. So limitations of Gram stain. So many times you will be expecting things, but we'll have some of the limitations in Gram stain where the cell wall deficient bacteria will not take up the Gram stain, and some of most of bacteria are intracellular in nature, which may be missed. And also antibiotic effect can be Gram variability to some extent we can see in the Gram stain smears. So here are the pictures, few pictures I put, rest of it you can see in the, have a look in the demonstration cards. So this is the gram stain where you will usually get the report as few, moderate or numerous. Gram-positive cocci, first picture shows gram-positive cocci arranged in pairs with few polymorphs, and second picture shows gram-positive bacilli with moderate polymorphs. Always remember gram-positive is violet in color and gram-negative is pink in color. And this is gram-negative bacilli showing with numerous pus cells. And the other slide is you can see those gram-positive beaded filamentous structures which are nocardia. So KOH mount with fungal hyphae, this is what you see from the corneal scraping. The moment you put the slide on KOH, if it is fungus is infected, then we can see this hyphae under the 10% KOH in the microscope. So you can see the varying different fungal morphology here. This is under the 40x, and you can see the pigmented hyphae in the slide. This is the pigmented hyphae. So this is gram stain showing hyphae. Usually the hyphae will always be gram positive. That is violet color will be seen. So you can see the varied sizes of the hyphae. You can see the septate and aseptate hyphae. So you will get a clue of what fungus it can be. So coming to the calculofluor white stain, this is a fluorescent stain. So this is calculofluor fluorescent stain. So this helps us to better visualize the hyphae from the corneal scrapings. You need a fluorescent microscope for this. So coming to the culture, these are the media which we use for cultivation of bacteria and fungus. So bacteria and yeast grows in 42 to 72 hours. Bacterial culture, what we follow is we incubate for 4 to 5 days and then give the report, and we incubate always in 5 to 7% carbon dioxide for bacterial culture. Fungal culture, we wait for 3 to 4 weeks of incubation for the fungal growth. And thioglycerate broth, 7 days of incubation, and for Mycobacter, 7 to 14 days. So we always keep telling that direct inoculation is the best. Why is the reason behind is it will enhance the recovery of the organism because of the smaller volume, and also some of the organisms are fastidious in nature. We may lose during the transit. So coming to the procedure for inoculating the swabs, as soon as you collect the swab, blood agar is the media which you can use. When you collect the swab, just open the lid and roll the swab in a zigzag pattern on the media, and then use the shield as a use this lid as a shield to protect from the aerial contamination. And then close the plate immediately and write your patient details in the base of the plate and then send it to the laboratory. So for corneal scrapings, the scrapings are they're inoculated into the media, blood agar. If you have sufficient scraping, use more than one media: blood agar, potato dextrose agar, chocolate agar, and then potato dextrose agar. If you don't have sufficient scraping material, first preference is blood agar, because blood agar allows both fungus as well as bacteria to grow. And slides also, one for gram stain and one for KOH. And always C-shaped is a standard scraping pattern which we follow. So the reason behind is both the surface of the spatula which we use to scrape is being inoculated onto the plate. So coming to the intraocular fluid inoculation. So as I told you, it's very precious sample. So 2 drops of plate on the plate, and then you have to close the plate and incubate. If you have sufficient sample, incubate potato dextrose agar and BHI and thioglycerate broth. Sometimes if you have very minimal, you are able to tap, then you can flush it into the enriched broths like liquid media, and then you can send it to the laboratory. Or if it is in-house lab, send the sample in as early as possible to the laboratory to process. So this is the few culture plates which you can see in the demo also. So first one showing beta hemolytic Staphylococcus aureus. This is a growth of corneal scraping showing Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and this is a plate showing the growth of nocardia. Sometimes you'll have mixed growth. You will have fungal growth as well as bacterial growth. So here is an example, a picture of fungal growth, which is like you can see the fungal growth here, as well as those small pinpoint colonies. So those are bacteria. See, most often we have classical book presentation of Syslamp examination will clinically give you a clue for you to that it is bacteria or fungal. Like you have specifications how a fungal ulcer looks, how a bacterial ulcer looks. So these are classical presentations which we see. But in an early encounter, especially in the early period, the classical signs may not be evident still. So it was a photographic survey in the year 2012 was studied. So in that, they gave photographs of all this and asked them to check whether it is bacteria or fungus based on the slit lamp examination. So what they could see was only the 66% of the cases they could identify that it is bacterial fungal correctly. Rest of the cases they identified it as wrong. So that is where our microbiological diagnosis helps us to give a correct diagnosis. So some of the examples what we can see is here the requisition the doctor has requested for fungal, but the culture grew bacteria. Here clinically there was no suspicion. We grew acanthamoeba and fungus. Clinically it was suspected as bacteria, but what we grew was fungus. Clinically fungus, what we grew was bacteria. So clinically, acanthamoeba was suspicious. So what we grew was Aspergillus flavus. So this is why sometimes the microbiological supports as well as confirms the diagnosis. So coming to the antibiotic susceptibility methods, see, I'll be telling you the basics of how you have to, I'll stress on how you have to interpret the antibiotic susceptibility reports. Now, before going to that, why do we need susceptibility testing methods? Because we need to know the appropriate agent. We need to select the antibiotic for treatment. And then we need to, if you know the susceptibility pattern of the locality, we can devise the empirical therapy for that particular area. Now we have two standards. One is Clinical Laboratory Standard Institute and UCAST guidelines. Most of our laboratories, we use CLSI guidelines. Now we have panel of antibiotics. So if our culture shows, based on the Gramstein report of our culture, based on that, we use the panel of drugs which acts for each category. Like panel of drugs which acts on gram-positive cocci are tested. So whatever the report is given to you, those are the drugs which acts on that particular organism. So we have different methods for susceptibility testing. So phenotypic, molecular based where resistant gene detection is done, and mass spectrometry methods. Commonest one which most of the laboratories follow is the phenotypic methods. One is dilution, diffusion, and the gradient testing. So diffusion method. So this is what commonly we use. That is disk diffusion method. So it is based on little bit to make you understand what disk diffusion to interpret the test. So what we do here is the culture which we grow, we have taken the bacteria, which is then it is inoculated onto the Muller-Hinton agar plate, and the antibody discs are placed at equidistant and it is incubated. Next day we see for the inhibition. Now if the bacteria is sensitive to that particular antibiotic, what will happen? You see a clear zone of inhibition. So if you get a clear zone of inhibition, that means it is sensitive. Then how do we tell that that is sensitive? Based on the diameter, zone of diameter, we tell whether it is sensitive or resistant. Now see, for example, this is, we have a standard strain which gives you the zone of inhibitions. Based on that cutoff value for that particular drug, we give the zone of, we'll tell it is sensitive or resistant. Now, I stress that if you find an antibiotic susceptibility report, see the methodology if it is disk diffusion, and in case if the report contains zone of inhibition measurements given there, don't go with the values always, because it's a qualitative analysis. Just go with only sensitive or resistant. Don't compare. Here, if you should not compare that ciprofloxacin is 27, Oflox is 17. So I feel ciprofloxacin is more sensitive than, more better drug than Oflox. It's not like that. It is only the qualitative analysis you have to select based on your sensitive category report, and based on your clinical expertise, you can go with different panel of sensitive drugs. You can check, select your antibiotics based on your clinical this one. But you have dilution method where you have, I'll take another 5 minutes. So another dilution method, this is quantitative analysis. See, now we are using disk diffusion method, which is a conventional method. In future, most of our laboratories will turn to Vitek only. Okay, so which gives us the MIC report. Now, when you look at an MIC reports, you should understand what is this MIC and little about how to interpret and how to select the antibiotic based on this MIC. So we have two entities. One is minimum inhibitory concentration at the break point. To understand this, I'll just give you an example. Say, for example, I'm testing MIC of natamycin against a Fusarium isolate. Now, natamycin, like what we do is we take the varying concentration of natamycin doubling dilutions in the wells and we inoculate the culture and then we incubate. Next step, we have to look for the growth in the wells. Now, what is MIC is, it is the lowest concentration of the drug which will inhibit the growth of that particular organism is the minimal inhibitory concentration. Now, what is the breakpoint is? It is a breakpoint where the dilution where the growth starts to appear. Okay, show the resistance. So you have standard breakpoints. Like how I told you, have a standard cutoff for a distribution test. Like same thing here also, we have standard breakpoints for each antibiotic agent against each standard isolate. Now, MIC, how do you select now? Based on your MIC, as I told you in distribution, you should not compare with the MIC or like distribution test, you should not compare with each one, but still we can select the antibiotic based on the MIC. How is it? By determining the therapeutic index. Now, therapeutic index is, it is a susceptibility break-on with the standard isolate by the MIC of the test isolate. Okay, to understand that, see here I have given meropenem. It's an we have two drugs which acts on the Escherichia coli. MIC of meropenem is 1 microgram and amikacin is 8 microgram. Now, what do you feel which is best among this for E. coli? Minimum inhibitory concentration for meropenem is 1, amikacin is 8. Anybody? Meropenem. Okay, everybody goes with meropenem because it's lesser than 8. Yeah, no, that's what I'm telling. You can select the antibiotic in MIC reports, but you should not compare with the MIC of meropenem with MIC of amikacin. What you should do is we have to check the therapeutic index for each thing one. See, for example, for meropenem, the susceptibility breakpoint for its standard isolate is 1 microgram because its breakpoint is 1 microgram, meropenem 1 microgram sensitive. And for amikacin, breakpoint is 16 microgram. But we have got 8 microgram only, we have got it as sensitive. So amikacin is better than meropenem. But how will you find out this is by calculating the therapeutic index, which is susceptibility breakpoint divided by MIC of the test isolate, which is 1. And susceptibility of breakpoint for E. coli is 16 divided by 8, it is 2. Now, this is the report which you get, MIC report, Vitek report or whatever MIC is given. This is a report. Most of the laboratories will give you this much. Up to breakpoint, they'll give you therapeutic index. Nowadays, few laboratories have started giving therapeutic index. But in case if they're not given, here, when you do the selection, when you have multiple drugs which are sensitive, now you want to know, especially in endophthalmitis, you want to know which drug I'll give the patient for effectiveness, more effectiveness. So you have 2-3 drugs, more than 2-3 drugs which are sensitive now. In that sensitive panel, you need to select the antibiotic. So here you can see that sensitive I have marked here. Therapeutic index you can calculate by yourself if the lab doesn't give you. The breakpoint should be given by the laboratory. So if the breakpoint is, you can sensitive breakpoint 4 divided by 4, 1. So you can calculate that higher the therapeutic index, more the drug effective. So just to make you aware, whenever you get, by chance, if you get an MIC report, how do you select the antibiotic was my intention to make you understand. So we have various methods. MIC, one most common, which most of the laboratories have started using is the Vitek 2, where ID also is automated and also you get the sensitivity report, which gives the MIC value. And you also have a gradient testing where E-strip, which we also use in Arvind for some of the drugs, we use the E-strip methods. So that is why that also gives you the MIC value. So to summarize, microbiological diagnosis aids in supporting and confirming the clinical diagnosis. As I told you, direct microscopy plays a major role. Bedside inoculation is the best method for culture yield. And sensitivity of culture in corneal ulcer is 35 to 58% usually in our data, and sensitivity of culture in endophthalmitis is 10 to 32%. So knowledge of the microorganism causing different ocular infections and familiarity in handling the ocular samples should be known to the technicians. And what I recommend is active communication with the lab is very much important. Whenever you're sending sample, speak to the lab, know your lab's protocol, send undiluted samples, perform bedside inoculation as much as possible. And for PCR, always freeze dried or send transport in the ice bag for very important. And always clinical correlation is the ultimate thing which you need to correlate clinically based on the microbiological report. Thank you.